Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pet Pawcast today. I'm your host, Dr. Roberta Westbrook, and we're here at the Houston SPCA, the campus for all animals. So today we have a wonderful, adorable little puppy that I want to introduce you to. Look at this cutie pie here. He is available for adoption, and he has a really special story. And this is Freddy. Freddy has a really special story. Freddy was unfortunately a victim of abuse. Freddy was thrown from a vehicle on the roadways, and luckily he survived and sustained very few injuries. And not all pets are lucky enough to survive and then be able to find their way into the loving arms of our staff here at the Houston SPCA to get them all the way better. So Freddy is well on his way to complete healing, and he is looking for his forever home. So cute. He's ready for you to teach him tricks. He's very smart. Just in the last few minutes, we've been able to teach him to sit and lie down and chase his tail. He's doing that on his own. But Freddy is a wonderful puppy. So come on down to our campus. There's no appointment necessary to come to our adoption center to look at all the dogs, cats, puppies, and kittens that we have available. You can make a family event out of it. Bring your family, your children, your friends, and come see what pets we have available to you. So you might notice that Freddy was looking like he was trying to scratch at his neck a little bit. And that's because we just outfitted Freddy with a brand new collar. And this is something that you might be considering as you think about adopting a new pet and how to prepare for bringing that pet into your home. One of the most basic necessities that you may need for that is a collar and a leash, maybe a crate. And so we're just going to talk about some of those basics today. How do you know what size collar that your pet needs? You want it to fit well, you want it to fit snugly, but you certainly don't want it to be too tight to where it's uncomfortable. So we've got Freddy in a really cute collar there. So please think about your questions that you have regarding bringing a new pet home and items that you might need to make that a smooth transition from the shelter to the home. And I can talk about some of the collars and harnesses that you will have choice for. All right, so let's get started. You know, collars and leashes can be made out of a myriad of materials. And so you may want to decide what kind of collar you want and the material you want based on your lifestyle. For example, there are these nylon collars that are very, very common. And these are probably the most common that you will see. There's some pros and cons to this. One of the things is that animals that chew a lot, puppies particularly, it is possible for them to chew through this if they work hard enough. And so you want to make sure that you size it correctly and that, because you certainly can have a pet chew through this. And sometimes when this gets wet, it can hold on to water. And so if your pet's going to be swimming or, bathing, make sure that you take the nylon collar off so that it doesn't hold water and it doesn't, kind of hold moisture up against your pet's skin. So, and if your pet is chewing on the collar as well, part of that could be that it's ill-fitted. So if it's so big that they can get the collar from around their neck into their mouth to chew on it, it could be that it needs to be a little bit more snug around their neck so that they cannot chew on it. But if they get to it, it's possible they could chew through this if they're really adamant about it. So, but they come in really, really cute colors and designs. And so you can be really, really stylish with these versatile nylon collars that have a metal ring that you can attach a leash to for walking. And they come with a nice little snap there, so it's really easy to get on and off. So these are, again, very common collars to start with. Now, collars that may be a little bit more durable are going to be collars that are made out of leather. So if you want to be, have a little bit more of a durable collar, these tend to be slightly more expensive, but they're really nice. They hold up. You can get collars that are made out of leather, and they can come with all sorts of designs too. Like you see here, one that has bones on it. This has a little braid here. So you can get these even engraved. And so leather collars have somewhat of the same setup. Now, most leather collars, instead of having the snap that I showed you earlier with the nylon collars, typically leather collars come with a buckle. And so it's not quite as quick to get on and off, but just like a belt is how you would get this on and off your pet. And so it might take a little bit longer. It's not just quite a snap. You've got to, get it on like you'd put on a belt, but they have, just like your belt loop does, holes so that you can adjust the collar as necessary. And so this might be a little quicker in terms of to adjust. You can make it smaller or larger. That might be quicker to adjust than the nylon collar. In order to make it smaller or larger, you may need to do a little bit of manipulation to this little buckle here to make the collar smaller or larger. So it just depends on what kind of effort you want to put into putting your collar on your pet and the durability of the collar. But we have some wonderful leather collars available. Then you can think about your lifestyle and whether or not you're going to be doing any exercising at night. Maybe you're a hiker, maybe you run, maybe you ride a bike, and sometimes you're out at night and you want your new dog companion to be with you. They do make some wonderful collars that light up. So we have a wonderful example here of a collar. You may not be able to see that, but this collar is special. It's for a large dog, but there's a little button on it that allows you for it to glow in the dark so that you can be seen at night. Your pet can be seen at night, kind of a glow in the dark collar. This is a really good idea if you're going to be out with your pet at night. They can even have harnesses that have this sort of glow in the dark technology as well. This is really good for safety. This is also made out of nylon as well. So we've got our nylon collars, our leather collars. And then when we're talking about types of collars, I want to move on to harnesses as well. So you also have to consider whether or not you prefer, hi, Freddy. I've been giving Freddy treats, so he's ready for treats.
Freddy with them?
Sure. So we can talk about, first of all, before we move on to harnesses, we can talk about how you measure and know what size collar you need for your pet. Hi, Freddy. You're so cute. So when you're purchasing a collar, usually on the collar, I'm trying to find one here, it will say on the label what size neck will fit this particular collar. For example, this collar says 35 to 50 centimeters or 14 to 20 inches. So if you can get just a quick little tape measure, then you want to make sure that you can put that around the neck of your pet. And again, you want it to be snug, but you don't want it to be so tight that it's going to be uncomfortable. So if I just measure the circumference of Freddy's neck here, it's right at about 12. It's right at about 12 inches. So this collar should be appropriate because it says that it will fit, it might be a little bit big. It says it'll fit 14 to 20 inches. So this one might be a little bit big. Now he could grow into this, so you could potentially get this one. I mean, he can grow into it, but initially you want it a little bit snug. So he might require a little bit of a smaller, collar. So we'll look through here and see if we can find one. One like this might be a little bit smaller and more appropriate for Freddy. So these are our options here. So you want to measure there. Now, another thing that you might want to do while you're measuring your pet is not only measure the circumference of their neck for the collar, but if you're considering getting a crate so that you can crate train your pet, it's also a good idea to measure them in height. So from the paw to the tip of the head, that's a good way to measure to see how tall they are so that you can get an appropriate size fitting crate. Not only there, but you can measure from tip of the nose to the tail to see how long they are. So, okay, we can measure Freddy. Come back here, Freddy. And turn Freddy this way, and we can measure Freddy in inches from his paw. Hi. You're going to eat the tape measure to about the tip of his head. Hello, kitty patootie. To about the tip of his head. Okay, he's probably about 15 inches tall. And so we want to make sure that we get a crate that's at least that height. You want your pet to be able to stand in the crate comfortably, so you don't want their head to touch the top of the crate, and you want them to be able to turn around and lay down and be able to lay down stretched out. So if we go from tip to tail here, Freddy's got his tail a little bit tucked there, but he's at least 18 inches. If we add the tail, we're probably at about 27 inches from tip to tail. And so those are good measurements to take when you're considering bringing a pet home, what size pet you want. And then you have to take into consideration how big you think your pet's going to get, because you may want to get one size larger in a crate if you expect your pet to grow. So the breed of your pet, Freddy's going to grow here. He's probably a Labrador mix. And so he's going to grow significantly. So you may want to consider getting a crate that he can grow into, and you don't have to purchase a new one every few months as he grows. Questions about collar sizes or crate sizes?
So it is the crate, you can't make it too big, right? Like if I just bought a gigantic one, like a little house?
Such a good question. Can the crate be too big? I would say it can be too big if you are trying to do something like potty train your pet. So oftentimes people will use crates to house train their pet or potty train their pet. And so they may put their pet in a crate for a particular amount of time so that they learn not to urinate or defecate out in their space. And in that case, you don't want the crate to be so big that your pet can urinate or defecate in the back of the crate and then move to the front, because that will not train them to kind of get used to holding their bladder. So initially, the crate could be too big. So if you're working on potty training still, you just want to make sure the crate is big enough for your pet to stand in, lie down comfortably, and then fit food and water bowls in there. So small food and water bowls, you want to be able to fit those in there. Great question.
What's the rule of thumb on the collar as far as a puppy who's going to be growing? How often do you check it as they grow?
Absolutely. So just like we fitted Freddy here with this collar, you want to make sure, and I mentioned being snug. One good rule of thumb is making sure that you can fit 2 fingers between the collar and the neck. And so, you want to be able to not only fit 2 fingers this way, but kind of if you were to stack your fingers, because you want to be able to fit 2 fingers between the collar and the neck. If it's too snug and you can't even get a finger underneath there, that's going to be really uncomfortable. And we certainly don't want to have injuries where as they grow, the collar stays and it starts to pinch on the neck. And in worst case scenarios, if it doesn't get checked frequently enough, that collar can actually dig a wound into the skin of the neck and create a large wound. We call those embedded collar wounds. And we see them, unfortunately, fairly frequently, more often than we would ever want to. But we see them here at the Houston SPCA, and we rehabilitate those animals and get them well. We actually have a dog here that's recovering from an embedded collar injury because it wasn't checked frequently enough. So these guys can grow really fast. So really, you should check it daily, not because you think they'll outgrow it daily, but just get in the habit of checking it as they're growing. When you're putting the leash on, give a good little kind of tug to the collar and make sure that it's not on too tight.
Is there a possibility that dogs or cats can be allergic to the material?
Oh, it's very possible. So there is a such thing in dogs called contact allergy. A contact allergy is some sort of material or something that they're lying on that can irritate their skin. So it is possible that your pet could have an allergy to the type of material. It's not uncommon, however, for your pet to start scratching at the beginning. So when they're not used to having a collar on, you just put it on. It's not uncommon for the first couple of days for them to scratch at it because they're just getting used to something being around their neck. But if that continues, or you start to notice the skin around the neck being red or inflamed, or the hair is falling out, these might be things that you consider that there could be a contact allergy going on, and you may want to try a different material like leather, for example.
Are kitten collars different?
Oh, yeah, we do have some cute little kitten collars. So they are the biggest thing that's probably different with a kitten collar is the little bell. So it's very often that cat collars come with bells. And this is because cats, as you know, are very sneaky, and they're very good at like kind of walking around the house. You won't even know they're there. And so this bell not only alerts other family members and pets that the cat's around, but if you ever need to find your cat, you could probably listen for that bell. So that's one of the biggest differences that we see. And often they are more narrow in size to fit the cat and be more appropriate and comfortable. And they also typically have a really easy snap release. because cats, as they get in things, they can certainly get their collars caught. And so this little snap release makes it very easy to come off if the cat ever gets caught in anything. So yes, but they come in very similar materials, nylon with little reflective strips so that if we're going outside, that they will glow in the dark. So cute little cat collars you can get.
Are there any materials that you need to avoid for a cat? Or is it the same for a dog or a guinea pig or?
Yeah, the materials are really the same. You just want to make sure, again, ideally, you don't want them to be able to chew on it. So a properly fitting collar is probably better, but certainly you can get little leather collars for your cat, nylon collars for your cat. And as long as they're safe and they're not chewing on them and not getting them caught, I think you are safe.
And walk us through some differences between the collar and the harness, because I see dogs wearing harnesses all the time as opposed to a collar. So I didn't know if that was
these are super cute. These harnesses are super cute. So pros and cons. Do you want a harness or a collar? And it really is personal preference and the behavior of your pet. So one of the things that's different is obviously this is going to fit over the whole body here. And sometimes when you attach the leash, so with the harness, the metal tag that you attach the leash to is on the back. It's going to be kind of on the back of your dog. And so oftentimes some dogs, this will trigger them to want to pull. So it's almost like they have this harness on like a sled dog. And in some dogs, they have a sort of resistance to the pulling. And so what they'll do is they'll want to pull a little bit more. So I would say if you're working on leash training with your pet, if your pet is already pulling a lot, I would say harness is probably not the thing to do because sometimes that can stimulate them to pull more. You may want to get a collar, a nice fitting collar, sit the collar up high on their neck and keep the leash very short so that they can't pull. And there's also special collars that have a little piece of material that goes around the muzzle so that if they pull, it redirects their focus back to you. And so there's certainly little special training collars that you can use. But harness, it can stimulate pulling, although in some animals, if you're not working on leash training, a harness is perfectly fine. And so it really is just your comfort level. And so they make harnesses that are kind of wide like this and very soft, very comfortable. They also make harnesses that are, again, kind of out of the nylon material that don't provide quite as much support as one like this, but still serve the same function. Probably the most difficult part in the harnesses is figuring out where to put all the length. I have to think about it myself. I'm like, okay, where's the front of this thing? So don't worry if this just looks like, where am I going to put the legs and the neck here? We all have to figure that. It all takes a minute for us as well, too. So, so cute little harnesses that you can try for your pet if you prefer a harness and you're not working on leash training.
What's a good age? Because we looked at Freddy earlier and he was pulling on just one of the simple leads we had. What's a general age that you should start teaching them leash training?
Right at the beginning, when you first get them, if you have your puppy at 3 months or so, you can start training 3 to 4 months. Start the training, just getting them used to having a collar on. You can leave the leash around their neck and let them kind of follow you around the house with the leash attached to their collar, and just getting them used to having a collar around their neck and a leash. You coming to them with the leash is very helpful, because what we don't want is we want your pet to associate the collar and the leash with something good, with a walk, with something positive. We don't want to instill fear in them. And some animals will have fear of collars and leashes. And so we want to make this a positive experience. When they see this leash, we want them to know that this means they're going to go on a nice little walk and they can enjoy this. What we're showing you here is actually we call a slip leash. So in this slip leash here, if you hold on to this end, kind of the handle, and this is around your pet's neck, as your pet pulls, if your pet is pulling, this gets a little bit tighter. It gets a little bit tighter around the neck, and they don't really like that, but also they don't necessarily stop the pulling. So what you just want to make sure that if you're using a slip leash, that it isn't becoming so tight that you're causing trauma to the pet. But this is a very common leash to use. They're inexpensive. If you just need a little quick leash, these are common to use.
And what about choke collars? The
Yes.
chain ones?
We don't have any example here of the choke or prong collars, but those are the metal collars that you see that kind of look like they have claws on the end of them. You may see them in some large breed dogs. It's more common to see them in large breed dogs. And what that's supposed to do is it's supposed to redirect the pet's attention from whatever they are focused on at the moment. So if they're wearing one of those prong type collars, it's kind of like a claw in their neck. And as long as they're behaving, it just sits on the neck. But as soon as they do something where they pull forward, or you as the owner trainer pull back on the collar, the claws can sort of pinch in on the neck a little bit, and it redirects their focus. And so it can help animals sort of shift their energy from whatever they're focused on if you need them to stop the pulling. It works in some animals, not others. So you really should be using it under the direction of a veterinarian or a trainer to make sure that you're using those prong collars efficiently and in the right scenarios. In some cases, if they're not used correctly and you pull too much, it can cause damage to the neck. So you want to make sure that you get proper guidance on how to use the chain, the choke collars, and the prong collars.
One last question, just any quick tips you can offer. I think we've all been in that moment where even one of my dogs, Maisie, she even knows how to get out of her harness. So we've had to change things up a little bit. What are some tips on responding to that when you're in the neighborhood and they are no longer on the leash?
Oh, yes. So what you should do even before this happens is your pet needs to have really good recall ability. So if your pet kind of can escape from their collar or their harness, you want to make sure that before that even happens, you have taught your dog to come when called. It's very, very critical so that they know not to get distracted from something and not to get loose from their collar or harness. And so this is something that you can teach them in the house, in your backyard, to prepare for those instances where they maybe get spooked or get out of their leash or collar and try to run from you. You want your pet to think of you as the reward. And so every time you call them, you want them to be willing to come right back to you because they know that it means love. They know that it means safety. They know that it might mean a treat. And so you want the reward of coming back to you to be greater than the reward of following whatever they've gotten their mind focused on. Well, thank you guys so much. Again, please come on down to our campus for all animals and take a look at the wonderful pets we have available. Pets can serve such a wonderful place in your family, in your heart, and we need you to help us save more animals. If you're interested in partnering with us, please go to HoustonSPCA.org/donate and become a supporter, a volunteer, a foster. There's so many ways that you can help support our family and pets like Freddy here. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.